Okay, hello and welcome back. Today in this lesson we are looking at making a list of shapes and then using that list of shapes to move them around on the screen. Okay, so last lesson we looked at creating a single shape. Today we are looking at doing a list of them. To start with, I've given you some template code. Very similar to last time, we're importing the Pygame and also the random function because we're going to be using that. Initializing, creating some colors that we're going to need. We've got our screen, caption, and then our main loop. Remember, it's set to done to false to start with, so it will keep going around. The only main change is instead of setting the screen to white, we filled it to black because we're going to be drawing some things onto it. So what we're going to be creating today is basically a bit of an animation using shapes that looks something a bit like this. We've got lots of different shapes being drawn, and it looks like falling snow. But really all it is lots of different circles that are being drawn and then moving in a pattern and direction on the screen. Okay? So far, with the template code I've given you, all you've got is a blank screen. Nothing on it, no shapes being drawn, just a blank screen ready to draw things onto. So the very first thing we're going to do is have a go at just drawing some shapes, just seeing what we can draw on there. So inside our loop here, inside our while loop, just under where we fill the screen black, remember this is all is very important, so we do the fill screen first and then draw things on top of it. We're going to create some shapes. So copy this code. For I in range 50, we're going to draw 50 shapes. We're going to create an x coordinate for it. X equals random.randRange. And I'm going to do from 0 to 640, which is the size of our screen. And then we're going to create a y coordinate, random.randRange from 0 to 480. So we've basically used the width and the height of the window here to create a random x and y position for our shapes. And then we're going to draw it. Pygame.draw. Instead of a rect, we're going to do a circle this time. Circle. Now remember our properties for these different shapes. We need the surface we're going to draw on, which is called screen. We need the colour, or we're going to draw them white this time, so it stands out. And then the coordinates, the XY coordinates. Now I've already made these XY coordinates just above. So we're going to use the XY coordinates here, 1, 2, and put them into here. Okay. Now, if we run this, let's see what we've got. Well, it's working, but it looks basically completely random. It looks like static on a TV. There's no sort of control over them. And what's happening really is 20 times a second, it's redrawing those circles randomly. So every 20 frames per second, every frame, it's redrawing the circles in a different random location on the screen. So it's just chaos. But at least it's working. We're doing something. Okay? So all 50 objects are being drawn randomly 20 times per second, which is pretty rubbish. Let's do something better. Okay? For the moment, I'm actually going to remove that code. Okay? We've tried it, but it's not very good. So we're going to go up now. We're going to go outside of our thing here, outside of our loop. What we're going to do instead is this time create a list of the different coordinates so it remembers where the positions, and we're going to use that list of coordinates to then draw the shapes moving in a controlled way. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to do a little comment here, create list of locations. So we're going to create a list here, shapes underscore list equals blank bracket bracket. That's creating an empty list for us to use. And then for I in range, just like we did before, 50, we're going to create our locations. So yes, you could have copy and pasted it, but practice makes perfect. 0, so 640, and y equals random.randRange to 480. Okay, so it's creating our locations, and then finally we're going to add it to our list. Shapes list, which is the name of the list we made, and we're going to go, dot append. So we're going to add them or append them to our list. And what do we need to append? we're going to append the XY values we've just created here. Now, you wonder why we've got this in brackets here. So what's actually happening is we're making a list of lists. We've got our list for shapes here, shapes list. Then inside that, we've now got smaller little lists for our X and Y positions. So for 50 different X, Y positions, oh, excuse my little bad annotation here, comma, then we've got another one. So all 50 locations of our shapes are being stored here, or generated randomly, and then stored ... until the end of the list. So we've got a list of lists basically with X and Y coordinates ready to use. Okay, let's have a go now. So we've now got our list ready to use. Oh, let's get rid of that. Sorry. Goodbye. We've now got our list of lists ready to use. We now need to do some drawing using that list. So back in our main loop now, we are now going to create the shapes. So I'm going to do comment create shapes using loop. Okay, again, for item in shapes list. So what that's going to do is loop through each item in this list we made up here for item in shapes list, and we are going to draw our circle. Pygame.draw.circle, same as we did before. The surface screen, the color white. Item, why item? Because we are using our loop here, our variable. So for every item in this shapes list, we are setting the item to the X and the Y coordinates. So it's going to take the X and Y coordinates from the item in the shape list and use it to draw our circle. Okay. And finally, the 2 on the end is the size of the circle, essentially. Okay, if you have a go and run your program so far, assuming you've got that code down, you should have something like this. Oh, look at that. So we now have 50 different items on the screen being generated randomly using the X, Y coordinates in the shapes list we made. However, you'll notice they're pretty boring because they don't currently move. They're sat on the screen doing nothing. So they are being redrawn 20 times per second, but they're being drawn all the time in the same X and the Y coordinates. So they don't move at the moment. So what we're going to do about that, we're going to make them move. So inside our loop here, now we've drawn the shapes, we're going to make them move. And we're going to use the Y coordinate, which is item 1 in the list. And we're going to add 1 to it. What's that doing? Well, remember here, the XY coordinate is being taken from the shapes list, which is back up here. Okay, here's our XY. And remember, 0 would be our X coordinate and 1 would be our Y coordinate. So what we're doing is we're taking the value from this one here, from our list, and we're adding 1 to it each time it goes round our loop. That's why there's a 1 there, because it's the index 1 from our shape list, and we're adding 1 to it every time it goes round. Oh, and I just realised, sorry, I left an equal sign off there. So plus equals 1, which basically means add 1 to it every time. Plus equals, apologies. Now if we run this, let's see. It's snowing. So our items are now being generated, and then every time it goes round our loop, it's being redrawn with +1 added to the Y coordinate, so it is moving down. However, you'll notice the shapes are going down the screen, they disappear off the screen, and they keep going. They disappear forever. They're actually still moving somewhere, going down until it runs out, but it's not regenerating. Okay, so let's fix that. Okay, so as it's moving downwards, we're going to add some code in here that says we're going to check the Y position of this, and we're going to say if the item 1, which is the Y coordinate, is greater than 500, so if it's gone beyond the screen, gone off the screen, which is 480, and it's gone down a bit more, item 1, which is the y coordinate, is going to be reset to 0. So it's going to reset and hopefully go to the top of the screen. So if the item 1 y coordinate 1 is bigger than 500, reset the y coordinate 1 to 0. Let's have a look. Now, as you see things going off the screen, suddenly they reappear at the top. Okay? So now we've got continuous snow in a loop, which is better, it's working. However, the only problem is basically it's appearing exactly the same place. So you can start to see patterns. The 3 there in the loop here will appear back at the top there, for example, or the 4 down here in a moment will appear back exactly the same pattern. There's no randomization to this, it's just following a pattern. There they are, there's our 4. So let's make it more realistic. So after it goes to the top of the screen, we're going to randomize it. Okay, we're going to put it back to the top of the screen in its original, well, Y position. However, we're going to randomize the X position. So the X position is index 0, and we're going to set it to a random number. Random.rand range between 640. So somewhere up to 640. Okay. And in fact, to keep like we're doing before, let's do 0 to 640. So a random is going to make a choice between these two numbers here, 0 and 640. Okay, let's see what happens. So now as our snow or our shapes code down to the bottom, they reappear at the top, and the X position is randomly selected from 0 over here to 640 on the other far corner. So it is more random now, which is better. Okay, so let's have a quick recap and see what we've done so far today. We have learnt to use a list to store X and Y positions and add things to a list. Okay, we have then learnt to draw objects in a loop using the coordinates from a list. So drawing multiple shapes from their coordinates. We've learnt to move those shapes by changing their Y position and by changing their X position using randomization. And that's essentially it. Okay, so multiple shapes being generated randomly in a pattern which gives the effect of snow. Okay, your challenge for today is to see if you can even further randomize it so that instead of just falling down slowly, we've got some randomization to the movement. Imagine wind blowing and sweeping the snow left and right in a bit of a blizzard. The snow is randomly moving, generated left and right or along the X coordinates as it is falling down. So it's not just from one movement. And also the speed of it falling. Instead of just going 1 pixel every time, the speed of it falling changes very slightly as well using randomization. Can you, inside your loop, randomize it so the X and the Y position and the speed of it falling down is a bit more random as it falls down? There's your challenge for today. Good luck, students. I'll see you in class.